All right, everyone, it is now 11:32. We're going to go ahead and get started with our public scoping meeting. We thank you, everyone, for taking your morning to join us to learn more about the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. My name is Matthew Marquez, Community Relations Officer with LA Metro, and thank you for joining us for our first of three public scoping meetings for the kicking off the environmental review process for the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to go over first, a couple of housekeeping items and as well as some Metro announcements, and then we're going to kick into our formal agenda for today. First things first, for those joining us that wish to listen to today's meeting in Spanish, we do have Spanish interpretation available. You can access interpretation features by clicking on the interpretation icon on your Zoom menu. When you click on the interpretation icon, you can pick the language by which you wish to listen to, whether that be in English or Spanish. We will also be posting the Spanish translated presentation in the chat as well too, and that will be posted shortly. I am now going to turn it over to Elsa, who is going to present the same information in Spanish. Elsa?
Buenos días. Para participar en español, haga clic en el icono de Interpretación en español. Seleccione el idioma que desea escuchar, Spanish, español. La presentación traducida al español ha sido publicada en el chat. Gracias.
Thank you so much for that. Sorry, everybody, about that technical difficulty. We're going to go ahead and move on with the rest of our housekeeping items. So thank you again for joining today's webinar. This is a webinar, which means that all attendee cameras are off and microphones are muted for the time being. Today's meeting is also being recorded, but don't worry, you won't be on camera during today's meeting. We will have an opportunity following today's formal presentation to provide oral public comments. This is formal comments that you can provide based off of today's presentation. We'll be going over a lot of new information on the project today, and we'll provide some more instructions on how to do that following today's formal presentation. If at any point during today's meeting you need any technical support, we do have staff on hand that is available to support you. You can call or text area code 213-600-9039, and our team will be available to assist you with any technical needs that you may have. We also do want to take the opportunity to allow any elected officials, neighborhood council representatives, or HOA representatives to introduce themselves. You can do so by introducing yourselves in the Q&A feature by putting your name and the association or group or elected official office that you're representing, and we'll be happy to announce you at a later point in the presentation. Next slide. Just also a friendly reminder about Metro's code of conduct when we host public meetings. Metro is committed to ensuring that all participants can fairly and clearly share ideas, comments, and concerns about the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. And in order to do so, we want to provide a safe and equitable process. And with that, we're asking for your help in order to do that. So during this meeting, we ask you to do a couple of things. First, we ask you to respect the format of today's meeting and allow an opportunity for everyone to comment. We also ask that while you are providing comment later in today's presentation, that you turn off any cell phones and or background noise while you're speaking so that our court reporter can hear you clearly, so that it'll be put in the official record. We also ask that you treat fellow community members, agency representatives, Metro staff, and others with respect during today's meeting, and that when you do provide your public comments, that you address all of your comments to Metro staff and consultants and not towards other attendees. And then we also ask that you maintain a conversational tone during today's meeting. And with that, we hope that we have a very successful meeting today, and we hope that you can provide you some great information about the next steps of this project. Next slide. We also have a general Metro announcement that we want all of our riders and customers to be aware of. So starting on January 10th, 2022, Metro will be resuming bus fares as well as front door boarding on the Metro bus system. With that, Metro is encouraging all eligible Life Program riders to apply for the Life Program, which currently will be having a discount for the first half of 2022. The Life Program fares will be at at half price through the first half of 2022. And new participants in the Life program will also receive 90 days of free fares once they sign up. The Life program is also being made easier to apply for. There's now an online application both in English and Spanish that's available to you. And if you're interested in learning more about the Life program, you can sign up or you can learn more at metro.net/writing/life. In addition to that, Metro regular bus passes are also going to be half off for the first half of 2022 through July 2022. And with that, that also includes day passes, week passes, as well as monthly passes. And so good deals for getting back on the Metro in 2022. Next slide. So now we're going to go into our agenda for today's meeting. So we're going to first start off today's meeting with some welcome and introductions. We're going to introduce our project team and get you to know who's working on this project. Following that, we're going to go into our project video, give you a little bit of recap of where we've been and where we're heading. And then we're going to go into our formal scoping presentation, which will go into more detail about our project purpose, goals, as well as our project alternatives for this project. Following that, we will spend the remainder of our public scoping meeting looking at public scoping comments. And this is an opportunity for you to provide your feedback. And we'll provide some more details about how you can provide oral public comments during that section of the meeting. And then to wrap up our meeting, somewhere close to 1:30, we'll provide you some next steps on how you can provide public comments throughout the public comment period, which will end on February 11th, 2022. So you have plenty of time to provide your comments. Today's not the only day that you can provide it, but I'll also provide you some resources that you can learn more about the project and provide well-informed comments. And then we also want to note that, while we will be here until 1:30, we will try to accommodate as many comments as possible based off of the allotted amount of time. And then we'll also remind you of the multiple alternate ways that you can provide comments that are available through February 11th, 2022. Next slide. So next, I want to introduce today's speakers and our project team that's with us today. First, I'm going to introduce David Meager, Senior Executive Officer with Countywide Planning and Development. Next, we have Peter Carter, Project Manager and Senior Director with Countywide Planning and Development. Next, we have Jackie Sue, Senior Transportation Planner with Countywide Planning and Development. Next, we have Project Manager for the Pre-Development Agreements, Kavita Mehta with Program Management. And then lastly, we have our Community Relations team, which is led by Karen Swift, Senior Manager with Community Relations, as well as myself, Matthew Marquez, Community Relations Officer with Community Relations. Next slide. So with that, as we always have it's our tradition now with our Sepulveda meetings over the past summer and fall, we want to know where everyone is coming from this morning. So we're going to announce a quick Zoom poll that we'd like you to participate in. And we want to know where you're coming from this morning, where you're joining us from. Are you from the Valley, the West Side? Are you maybe joining us from the downtown LA area, maybe the South Bay? Curious about that connection to LAX in the future. Are you joining us from outside of LA County? We want to know where you're coming from. So we have a couple of questions, 2 quick questions, where you're coming from. And then we want to know, have you previously attended a community meeting for the Sepulveda Transit Corridor before? Or is this your first time learning about the project? And so if you can quickly answer those questions. Stevie, if you can let me know once we've reached about 80%, we'll go ahead and announce those results. We'll give everyone a minute to put in their responses.
I think we're just about there. I'll give it a few more moments.
Great. Stevie, when you're ready, go ahead and close the poll. Excellent. We just closed the poll and looks like we have a pretty good split between the west side and the San Fernando Valley. Around 30% of you are coming from the west side this morning, and around 27% of you are coming from the San Fernando Valley. But we also have some good representation from the downtown area as well as San Gabriel Valley, as well as about 13% of you coming from outside of LA County. So great to see the split there. And then with regards to those that have participated with us, it actually looks like about 60% of you have attended a meeting or submitted a comment on this project before. So we thank you for joining us again and learning more about this next phase and important phase of the project, the environmental review phase. And we also thank the 40% of you, around 60 of you, that are joining us for the first time. So thank you so much for joining us. There's going to be a lot to learn today. And so we thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and close the poll and go to the next slide. So now we're going to kick off our meeting with our project video, which is hot off the press here, which is going to go over a little bit of history on the project and then some of the project alternatives, and then we'll move into the formal presentation for today's meeting. Stevie, let's go ahead and play the video.
Traveling between the valley and the west side isn't easy or fast, and traffic will only get worse over time.
Metro has a plan to make it easier to get around. The natural barrier created by the Santa Monica Mountains makes this area complex and challenging, and will require innovation and multiple solutions. Metro is studying several projects in this area, including a new rail line with the Sepulveda Transit Corridor.
The Sepulveda Transit Corridor project can provide reliable, high-capacity public transportation to provide an alternative to traffic and help take cars off the road.
Before we get into the latest updates on this project, let's quickly catch up on our progress to date.
Metro completed a feasibility study in December 2019. The study looked at potential alternatives for traveling between the San Fernando Valley and LAX.
In our extensive outreach for this study, we received more than 1,200 public comments.
All of this public feedback and our technical analysis from the feasibility study has informed the range of proposed alternatives being advanced for environmental review.
In March 2021, the Metro Board approved pre-development agreements with LA Skyrail Express and Sepulveda Transit Corridor partners to pursue a potential public-private partnership to accelerate delivery of the Valley to West Side section of this project.
The pre-development agreements, or PDAs, bring in teams that include designers, construction contractors, and financial partners to begin working with Metro earlier, when the project is still being planned, and long before we get into heavy construction activity.
This early partnership can help to prepare designs that incorporate insights from construction and long-term operations and maintenance. This offers a life cycle approach to the project and prepares it for a possible public-private partnership. The PDA teams worked with information from Metro's feasibility study to offer their proposed alternatives using proven rail technologies.
We're now beginning environmental review. This is a formal, regulated process where Metro will study various aspects of each proposed alternative, including benefits, cost, feasibility, impacts, and any necessary mitigations.
There are several points of community input during the multi-year environmental process.
The Metro Board will select the locally preferred alternative or final route and mode for this project.
Let's look at the 6 alternatives we'll be studying in environmental review. They are identified with numbers.
All alternatives begin at the Van Nuys Metrolink station, which will provide connections to Metrolink trains, as well as the future Metro East San Fernando Valley Light Rail, Metro G Line, formerly known as the Orange Line, and end on the west side at the Metro E Line, formerly known as the Expo Line.
Alternatives 1, 2, and 3 are monorail.
Alternative 1 is fully aerial, traveling west before heading south along Sepulveda, with stops at the Metro G Line, Sepulveda Station, and Ventura Boulevard. Then it continues over the 405 through Sepulveda Pass with a stop at the Getty Center before continuing to the D Line Westwood VA station. It then heads south to a stop at Sepulveda Boulevard to end at the current E Line Sepulveda station. This alternative also includes an electric bus connection from the Westwood VA station to Veteran Avenue, Westwood Village, and the UCLA campus.
Alternative 2 follows the same route as Alternative 1, but with an automated people mover connection to the UCLA campus from the UCLA Westwood D Line station. An automated people mover is a small-scale, driverless transit mode similar to what you might see at an airport.
Alternative 3 runs along the same aerial route through the Sepulveda Pass and goes underground after the Getty Center to provide an underground connection to the UCLA campus. From there, it connects to the UCLA Westwood D-Line station before returning to an aerial 405 route with a stop at Santa Monica Boulevard and ending at the E-Line Sepulveda station.
Alternatives 4, 5, and 6 are heavy rail.
Alternative 4 has an aerial segment along Sepulveda Boulevard before moving underground after Ventura Boulevard, where it continues underground for the rest of the route. This alternative would have underground stations at the UCLA campus, Westwood UCLA D-Line station, Santa Monica Boulevard, and the E-Line Sepulveda station.
Alternative 5 begins aerial at the Metrolink Van Nuys station and then moves underground along Sepulveda Boulevard for the rest of the route. It heads along Sepulveda with underground stations at Sherman Way, the Metro G-Line Sepulveda station, Ventura Boulevard, UCLA, the Westwood UCLA D-Line station, and Santa Monica Boulevard before ending at the E-Line Sepulveda station.
Alternative 6 is entirely underground. From Van Nuys Station, it heads south under Van Nuys Boulevard, stopping at the G-Line Van Nuys Station and Ventura Boulevard. From there, it continues with stops at the UCLA campus, Westwood UCLA D-Line station, and Santa Monica Boulevard, before turning west to end at the E-Line Bundy station.
We're now entering scoping, which is the first step in the environmental review process.
During this stage, we want to hear from you about what Metro should consider and study as we prepare the environmental impact report for the Sepulveda Transit Corridor.
Possible comments might include input on the destinations that you think are important to serve, your preferences for transit in this area, and questions or concerns you might have about project impacts.
We will be conducting virtual scoping meetings where we can hear your comments.
We will also take formal comments via mail, email, our website, or over the phone during the scoping period.
We appreciate your interest in this transformational project and look forward to hearing from you.
Excellent. That's our project video that is hot off the press, and we'll be sharing that link in the chat shortly. With that, I'm now going to turn it over to Karen Swift, Senior Manager with Community Relations, who will start our formal presentation.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you so much to all of you for joining us this morning. It looks like we have over 200 participants so far this morning, and I'm watching that number continue to climb. So thank you for spending your day with us. I do want to take a minute just to acknowledge some of the folks who joined us today from our elected officials office, our neighborhood councils. Just to start us off real quick, thank you so much to Dan Rodman and Diego de la Garza from Mayor Eric Garcetti's office, Eric Bruins from LA Council Member and Metro Board Director Mike Bonin's office, Sahag Yadalian from Director Krikorian and LA Council Member Krikorian's office, also Aaron Seinfeld from Mayor Garcetti's office, and Jay Greenstein from the office of Council Member Paul Koretz. So thank all of you. If I missed anyone, please use the Q&A function to let us know you're here so we can acknowledge you. Similarly, we have a number of different neighborhood councils represented here today, so I want to take just a minute to acknowledge those folks. Kay Hartman is here from Palms Neighborhood Council, Joanne D'Antonio from the Greater Valley Glen Neighborhood Council, Andrew Lewis and Evan Farrar from the North Westwood Neighborhood Council, Jeffrey Hartzo is here from the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council, Furkan Yalston is here also from the North Westwood Neighborhood Council, Elliot Hutchberg from Palms Neighborhood Council, and Glenn Bailey from the Encino Neighborhood Council, and Corey Solomon from the Brentwood Glen Association. So if I missed any neighborhood councils or any other folks, use that Q&A to let us know that you've joined us today. So with that, I do want to get us underway. So Metro has a plan to make it easier to get around Los Angeles, and that includes creating better transit. The Sepulveda Transit Corridor project works to provide a competitive transit option from the San Fernando Valley to the west side. Next slide. Everything we do at Metro weaves across 4 areas, and so you see those listed here at the top. Better transit, less congestion, complete streets, and access to opportunity. And everything that we do at Metro is focused on eliminating in everything that we do. So throughout today's presentation, you'll hear us hit on those themes of equity when we talk about equity-focused communities, and sustainability. Those are key things underpinning all of our effort, and certainly led by our new CEO, Stephanie Wiggins. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my planning colleague, David Meager, Senior Executive Officer in Mobility Corridors Planning. David.
Hey, thank you, Karen. I'm going to go through 3 slides to just give a little bit of the context and the background for why we're building in the Sepulveda Pass. I know many of you live in the valley of the West Side, and you've been confronted with traffic and issues regarding traffic traveling through the 405, many of the mountain pass roads that go through Coldwater Canyon, Laurel Canyon, Beverly Glen. And this is an effort to really move more people through the pass without moving more cars. And we're really optimistic that this can happen. The map that we're showing here is when we actually completed the Red Line project, or now the B Line, just about 20 years ago now, that connects downtown Hollywood up to Universal City in North Hollywood. That subway line passed under the 101 Cahuenga Pass corridor and was opened successfully, and actually doubled the ridership on our subway system within a month or two of after it opened. Just the pent-up demand of people trying to travel down the 101 freeway into the central city area from the valley. And then it connected almost immediately with the Orange Line, which is a former railroad right-of-way that you see going across the valley. It's now the G Line, with stations about every mile across the valley. And it does have stations at Van Nuys and Sepulveda, which would be a convenient place for us to interface with the Sepulveda line. The dashed line you see about Van Nuys Boulevard going up through Van Nuys, Panorama City, Sylmar, Pacoima, is a line that we're just about ready to start construction on. It's a light rail project running in the median of Van Nuys Boulevard, which connects up to the Van Nuys Metrolink station, the Amtrak line in Van Nuys, and that forms the nexus where we can actually complete the intercity rail, the regional rail, the local rail on Van Nuys Boulevard, and this project, and also with the Orange Line. And then moving further south, as we heard before from Peter, the Expo line has been open now for a number of years, open between 2012 and 2015. And then the construction going on right now for the Purple Line, which is now our D Line, right at Wilshire and Westwood Boulevard and at the VA Hospital campus. You can see that construction underway as we speak, and that line is scheduled to open before the Olympic Games in 2028. And UCLA, of course, will be a major venue for the Olympic events at that time. So we have these east-west lines. We have another north-south line going through the Cahuenga Pass, and now we're looking at the Sepulveda Pass and creating a network of connectivity options to get people from the valley to the west side and to the points north and south and further east towards downtown. So it's a major link that we're trying to complete in our system. Next slide. Wanted to talk a little bit to the Sepulveda Pass. We completed a few years back, and many of you that live in the area remember the widening project, the improvement project along the 405 freeway, where we widened the lanes to full standard lanes, 12-foot lanes. We improved the shoulders. We improved many of the on and off ramps to the freeway in order to improve the capacity and the safety along the 405 freeway. Although, as many of you know, the demand for this route through the mountains is so severe that building it with more traffic lanes is just not going to happen, or very constrained within the canyons of going through the Sepulveda Pass. So we really have to look for other options to get through the pass. So in addition to this project, we also have several other initiatives that are underway, parallel studies going on at the same time. I mentioned the D Line, the Purple Line, which is under construction. We have a Sepulveda Pass Express Lanes project, and we had some scoping meetings for that project a couple of months back. We're basically looking at express lanes such as we have on the 10 freeway and the 110 freeway right now, where in areas of severe congestion, we have lanes where people, by paying a variable fare based on congestion, can actually travel upwards of 45 miles an hour through the pass during even the peak of the rush hour. We're looking at opportunities to do that in the Sepulveda Pass, in the median area of the freeway. And also outside of the Sepulveda Pass area, we have a 405 comprehensive multimodal corridor plan, which the 405 goes all the way up to the North Valley, where it joins the 5, continues through the valley, through the pass, through the west side, the South Bay curve, and looking at a comprehensive way of enabling the flow and better the flow along the 405 through that longer stretch of the project. And finally, one last study we're also doing, our traffic reduction study, is looking at various methods of pricing or measuring travel to encourage behavior that's in maybe outside of the rush hour period. Maybe there's some pricing policies, maybe there's various ways of doing it so that it encourages people to travel outside of the peak periods. or at least provides better service during those peak periods. So there's a number of initiatives that all coupled together, we think, can help make travel more bearable through this very heavily congested area. And we'll continue to coordinate these efforts. I think, of course, when you're doing so many projects, this project is going to have to coordinate with all three of these other projects, particularly the Express Lanes project, because we have a project here that could be in the middle of the freeway. Express Lanes could be there too. So we need to coordinate very closely with those two designs to make sure that we're not impacting either one of their ability to operate. Next slide. And this is just a little bit of background we wanted to talk about how we got here. Peter mentioned it in the video, but Measure M was really the benefactor for this project. We had a 71% approval of that plan countywide, and included several projects that we are currently developing in the San Fernando Valley and West Side area. The study that we did in 2017 to 2019 was trying to look at a broad range of alternatives through the Sepulveda Pass corridor, both below ground and above ground. And at that time, there were 3 heavy rail alternatives that were identified, and 1 monorail alternative that was identified for further study to be carried forward. With the results of that study, we put out these pre-development agreement solicitations to the private sector and tried to attract the attention of firms that have extensive experience in building and owning and operating these types of transit lines to get their experience early on. Normally, we wouldn't bring in a contractor until the end of the environmental process, but this is an effort to bring them in at the very beginning so that they're on board. And today they've been under contract since August to proceed and help us to identify and refine these alternatives through the environmental process. By no means are these 6 alternatives fixed in stone today. They're initial proposals that we receive from these firms. And our goal is through the environmental process to refine them, narrow them down, and ultimately get to a single project that we can develop through this area that has the most amount of community support and has a firm commitment from a team that has extensive experience in developing these types of projects. The initiation of environmental review is where we are today. We have a reasonable range of alternatives, including the no project alternative and 6 alternatives. And for some of you that had heard 5 before, we just want to clarify, and we'll go through it. There's 3 monorail alternatives and 3 variations of the subway alternatives. And they really have to do with connections to UCLA and whether they're above ground or below ground in the San Fernando Valley are the main differences between those alternatives. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Kavita Mehta to talk a little bit about the PDA teams and the process going forward with that.
Thank you, David. Afternoon, everyone. I am Kavita Mehta, Deputy Executive Officer with Metro Program Management and Project Manager for the Sepulveda Pre-Development Agreements. So why are we pursuing pre-development agreements or PDAs for this project? We understand the need for this project in this highly congested corridor. What we also know is that given the topography and the built environment, the design and construction of this project is also going to be quite challenging. So with this PDA approach, we are involving contractors who build projects into early planning and design phases, so we can make sure right from the beginning that we are designing something that can ultimately be constructed. We also anticipate the PDA approach to allow for technical and financial innovation. The PDA approach allows us to think about cost effectiveness over the life of the project. So we're not just thinking about what is cost effective to design and construct, but what is also cost effective to operate and maintain in the long run. And lastly, it would allow for schedule acceleration. Next slide. These are the key milestones in the PDA process. It was back in July of 2019, the Metro Board approved PDA approach for this project. We conducted industry outreach, issued a RFP, evaluated the proposals, and as David said, in March of this year, we awarded 2 PDA contracts, one to LA Skyrail Express for their proposed monorail technology, and the second one to Sepulveda Transit Corridor Partners for heavy rail technology. And just in August of this year, we issued the NTPs to both the PDA teams. Next slide. Metro Program Management provides oversight over both the PDA teams. So my team and I, we manage both the PDA teams, we review their work products, and we also coordinate with my colleagues in planning to provide the necessary input into the environmental documents. This is a little bit different. Usually Metro Program Management gets involved during advanced design and construction phases. But here, since we are following a PDA approach, Metro Program Management is involved during these early phases, again, to make sure right from the beginning that we design something that can be constructed. We take a life cycle approach to this project. And also we take advantage of the critical input that the private sector partners can provide during these early planning and design phases that can help us during the later phases. So since coming on board in August of 2021, the PDA teams have been busy. They have refined the concepts that they proposed as part of their proposals into distinct alternatives, which are going to be discussed with you, presented to you more today. These alternatives, we will take the feedback from the scoping process, and these alternatives are going to be refined further as feasible in response to that feedback. And it is the refined alternatives which are going to move forward into the environmental document for full analysis. And with that, I will hand it over to Jackie.
Thanks, Kavita. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie Sue, Senior Transportation Planner with Metro Planning. As we think about project goals and objectives, let's talk about current transit service. Next slide, thank you. The Sepulveda corridor provides an essential transportation link between the San Fernando Valley and the West Side. Over 400,000 people travel the corridor each weekday, but less than 2% do so by transit. Congestion on roads and freeways affects transit service as well as private vehicles, and the table on this slide provides some additional insight. These transit lines operating between the Valley and West Side have average speeds less than 20 miles per hour, and their on-time performance is in the 50% range. Because of slow travel speeds and unreliable travel times, current transit service in the project corridor is not competitive with travel by car. Next slide. This leads us into a discussion of the purpose of the project. The purpose of the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project is to provide a high-quality transit service that effectively serves a large and growing travel market between the San Fernando Valley and the West Side. Next slide. The project goals and objectives will help guide the environmental process and identify the merits and challenges of each alternative. These goals and objectives might look familiar to you because they're informed by the goals and objectives from the feasibility study. Since that early planning study, we have updated these goals based on the work of the feasibility study and associated outreach, and we have also updated the goals to further emphasize equity and sustainability. The project has 6 goals. The first of these goals is to improve mobility, which means increasing transit frequency, decreasing travel time between the Valley and the West Side, increasing transit ridership, prioritizing connections to local points of interest and destinations, promoting efficiency of transfer experience between transit lines, and supporting non-automobile first last mile connections, which means walking, riding, or rolling to and from a station. The second goal is to improve accessibility and promote equity. This means improving access for equity-focused communities, which are communities in which a percentage of residents are low income, people of color, and have no access to a vehicle. This goal also emphasizes identifying and pursuing investments that serve those with the greatest mobility needs. The third goal is to provide a cost-effective solution and to minimize risk, maximizing benefits to the public relative to cost, and maximizing potential eligibility for state and federal funding opportunities. Next slide. The fourth goal is to support community and economic development, which means increasing opportunity for economic growth around stations, minimizing physical barriers to communities, and prioritizing station placement and design that is consistent with community context, essentially being a good neighbor. The fifth goal is to protect environmental resources and support a sustainable transportation system, including reducing vehicle miles traveled, greenhouse gas emissions, and other air pollutants, in addition to addressing potential impacts to environmental resources. The sixth goal is to enhance resiliency, improving the resiliency of the metro system to natural disasters and climate change. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Peter to discuss project alternatives.
Thank you, Jackie. My name is Peter Carter from Metro Planning, and I serve as the project manager for the environmental review of this project. Wanted to thank you all for joining us today, whether today's your first meeting or you've been with us for several months or for the past few years. I appreciate your continued engagement with the project and for listening to our presentation today. The proposed project would construct and operate a dedicated piece of transit infrastructure across the Santa Monica Mountains between the valley and the west side. All of the project alternatives would have a northern terminus station, which is to say an end of the line in the north near the Van Nuys Metrolink Amtrak station, and a southern terminus station, an end of the line in the south near the Metro E line or Expo line, either the Bundy station or the Sepulveda station. Next slide, please. There are three different transit technologies under consideration. They include an automated monorail, an automated heavy rail, and a driver-operated heavy rail. These different technologies accommodate different numbers of passengers in their train cars. They have different numbers of train cars in their train sets, and they operate during peak periods at different frequencies, but all of these technologies have sufficient capacity to meet the needs of the project. Next slide. So the next 6 slides are going to take us through the 6 alternatives that are currently proposed for environmental review. Alternative 1 is the first monorail alternative. All of the monorail alternatives are in an aerial alignment within the 405 corridor. The differentiating feature of alternative 1 is a bus connection to UCLA. So the monorail alignment length is 15.3 miles. There are 8 stations associated with this alternative, which starting from the south include a connection to the Metro E line, a station at Santa Monica Boulevard, a connection to the Metro D line, stations at the Getty Center on the 101, a connection to the Metro G line, and stations at Sherman Way and the Van Nuys Metrolink station. The bus connection to UCLA connects to the Metro D line, formerly known as the Purple Line, at the Westwood VA station. In order to operate any of these alternatives, the project will require a maintenance and storage facility site, places where the vehicles are kept in good repair and stored when they're not in use. The maintenance and storage facility site for the monorail associated with this alternative is located above the Metro G line Sepulveda station parking lot, and the maintenance and storage facility site for the electric bus associated with this alternative would be in the same location alongside the UCLA bus Bruin facility, co-located in that location. Next slide, please. Alternative 2 is the second monorail alternative, and a differentiating feature of this alternative is a connection to UCLA using an aerial automated people mover. The monorail portion of the alignment is 15.8 miles in length, and it has the same 8 stations as alternative 1. You'll notice if you look at the small inset map that the monorail alignment comes out of the 405 corridor to get to Veteran Avenue. And it's at Veteran Avenue and Wilshire Boulevard that the monorail connects to the automated people mover, connecting passengers to UCLA. The maintenance and storage facility site for the monorail for this alternative is in the same location as alternative 1. And the maintenance and storage facility site for the automated people mover is located above the UCLA Bruin bus facility. Next slide, please. Alternative 3 is the third monorail alternative, and the differentiating feature of this alternative is an underground connection to the UCLA campus. The alignment length is 16.2 miles, and that additional station is a station at the UCLA campus. The underground alignment extends from just south of the Getty Center to just north of Wilshire Boulevard, and the maintenance and storage facility site is in the same location as the other alternatives 1 and 2. Next slide, please. Alternative 4 is the first of 3 heavy rail alternatives. The differentiating feature of this alternative is an aerial alignment along Sepulveda Boulevard in the valley. The alignment length is 14 miles and includes 8 stations, beginning from the south with 4 underground stations, a connection to the Metro E line, a station at Santa Monica Boulevard, a connection to the Metro D line, and a station at UCLA. And then on the other side of the Santa Monica Mountains, 4 aerial stations, one at Ventura Boulevard, one at Metro G line, Sherman Way, and at the Van Nuys Metrolink station. The maintenance and storage facility site for Alternative 4 will be located just to the west of Woodman Avenue and south of the Metrolink Ventura County Line Railroad tracks. Next slide. Alternative 5 is our second heavy rail alternative with the differentiating feature of an underground alignment along Sepulveda Boulevard in the valley. It has the same 8 stations as Alternative 4, with the difference that all of those stations are underground, except for the connection to the Van Nuys Metrolink station. The maintenance and storage facility site for this alternative would be in the same location as Alternative 4. Next slide. Finally, Alternative 6 is the third heavy rail alternative. The differentiating feature of this alternative is an underground alignment along Van Nuys Boulevard in the valley. The alignment is 12.6 miles in length, and it includes 7 stations, a connection to the Metro E line at the Bundy station, a station at Santa Monica Boulevard, a connection to the Metro D line, a station at UCLA, Ventura Boulevard, and that connection to the Metro G line, and a connection to the Van Nuys Metrolink station. The maintenance and storage facility site for Alternative 6 would be just east of Van Nuys Boulevard and north of the Van Nuys Metrolink station railroad tracks. Next slide, please. We'll also be looking at a no project alternative as part of our environmental review. And a no project alternative means a scenario in which all existing highway and transit services and facilities are considered, as well as near future transit and highway projects, with the exception of this one, the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. Next slide, please. So in the next few slides, we'll take a look at the environmental process in a little more detail. You'll notice that we've moved our yellow "We Are Here" marker forward. With the beginning of the scoping period, we've begun environmental review, but we've still got several steps of engineering and design and construction before we get to the operation of the line. Next slide, please. When we use the word scoping, we're talking about the scope of environmental review, and the draft environmental impact report is the first document that we'll be producing as part of our environmental review. Over the past few months, we've heard a lot from people about things they'd like to hear more about, and some of those topics are included here, as we'll be expecting them within that draft environmental impact report. So, for example, the report will include a summary evaluation of the alternatives and include construction costs, right-of-way costs, annual operating costs, as well as benefits associated with the project. So ridership, reduction in automobile miles traveled, and increased mobility for equity-focused communities resulting from the project. We'll also be talking about impacts, by which we mean the effects of the project on the environment, including things like property acquisitions, as well as conceptual engineering plans for those looking for a little more detail, which will include things like track alignments and typical cross-section, station layouts, right-of-way impacts. The draft environmental impact report will also include environmental technical reports analyzing each alternative, which we'll say more about on the next slide. So the draft environmental impact report will study the potential effects of construction and operation of the alternatives, and evaluate measures to avoid, minimize, and mitigate potential impacts. Some of the examples of the potential impacts that we'll be studying are shown here. This list gives you a sense of the depth and the breadth of that analysis. Next slide, please. So from now through February 11th, the There'll be an opportunity to review the description of alternatives and their associated maps, as well as the objectives that we've articulated that'll be used to evaluate the alternatives. The meeting that we're having today is a scoping meeting, and the purpose of today's meeting is to provide more information about the alternatives, as well as to receive your verbal comments if you have them, although there are many other opportunities and ways that you can provide those comments. We're looking for your feedback on refinements to the alternatives that we should be considering, as well as any environmental questions that you'd like to see answered as part of this study. And with that, I will thank you again for your engagement and your participation in today's meeting and turn things back over to Karen Swift.
Thank you, Peter. Matthew, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you for that presentation. I do want to take just a minute to acknowledge some folks who have joined us since we last made the encouragement to join us if you're here from an elected official's office or a neighborhood council. So I want to take just a moment to acknowledge Deb Menson from the Office of Mayor Garcetti, Anissa Raja from Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez's office, Mehmet Burker from Council District 4, Councilmember Nithya Raman's office is here. So thank you all for joining us today. A few more folks here from neighborhood councils. Christy Adair is here from the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council, Nancy Matson from the Del Rey Neighborhood Council, Joseph Roth from Westside Neighborhood Council, Irene Sandler has joined us from Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council, Steve Sand from the Westwood Community Council, Thelma Waxman is here from the Brentwood Homeowners Association, Parvin Kasai from the Westside Village Homeowners Association, and Barbara Broidy from the Westwood South of Santa Monica HOA. So I think I got everybody this time, but if once again we've missed you, I know you'll let me know. So I want to take just a moment to talk broadly about outreach, and that's a good segue from our neighborhood councils and our elected officials who've joined us today. So we got underway last week with the notice of preparation, which we issued to public agencies, posted on our project website, some legal ads, posts on our blog, The Source and El Paso Herald in English and Spanish. We also have a Spanish media campaign that's coming up, and a targeted social media campaign. So if, like me, you live or travel through the Sepulveda Pass, you may be seeing targeted Facebook ads coming your way promoting this meeting and our other outreach activities. We have a website, we have a helpline, we have email, we have an interactive bilingual story map that's got all of those alternative slides that you saw today in the video and that you saw in Peter's presentation just now. So if you want to zoom into those and chew on them, the story map is a great place where you can find that information. We've got frequently asked questions that are posted on our project website, and I do want to just reiterate that we are not taking questions today at this scoping meeting. The purpose of today's meeting is to take public comment. So your comment may include questions, but we won't be responding to questions. But we invite you to take a look at these resources, especially our FAQs. Spent a lot of time in 2021 addressing different questions, and so hopefully your questions can be answered there. We have the new project video as we debuted today, and that link has been posted in the chat. We have, believe it or not, 15,000 people have signed up to get e-blasts on this project, so it's a testament to the great interest that we've got from the public in the project. One of the things we're excited about is that we have car cards running inside our Metro buses in both English and Spanish. So if you are a transit rider, you are hopefully seeing that information inside the buses, along with some of our municipal operators who have helped us out by spreading information. So thank you to LA Department of Transportation, Antelope Valley Transit, Beach Transit, Santa Monica Big Blue Bus, and Torrance Transit for helping us get the word out. Next slide. So we do have our official scoping period, and so I want to just thank everyone who's been with us here for the last hour. And if you need to leave early, we really want to make sure that you understand that there are lots of ways for you to give your comments, and they don't have to be by staying here today with us for the next hour, giving verbal comment, because we recognize we have shared a lot of information with you today, and you may want to take some time to think about that. So the different ways that you can give comments between now and February 11th are through our online comment form. And I'm going to read these out loud for people who have joined us by phone today, so bear with me. So if you want to go directly to our online comment form, that web address is bit.ly/capital Sepulveda, capital comment, capital form. It is case sensitive, so you'll need to type Sepulveda comment form as all one word, and then capitalize the S, the C, and the F. You can mail a letter to Peter Carter, our project manager for this environmental process, at Metro at 1 Gateway Plaza, mail stop 99-22-6, Los Angeles, California, 90012. You can email us. So you can email us a letter, you can email us just directly at sepulvedatransit@metro.net. So again, sepulvedatransit@metro.net. And you can call our project hotline and leave a message there. And the hotline has been specially configured during our scoping period to take your comments. So you can call us at 213-922-7375. Again, that's 213-922-7375. As we've shared, we have 3 public scoping meetings. This is the first of them, but we'll have 2 more opportunities just like today in January. And it'll be the same presentation, the same material. And the next one will be Tuesday, January 11th between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. And then the last scoping meeting will be Saturday, January 22nd, 2022. As we announced at the beginning, this meeting is being recorded. So once we have finished with this meeting, we've got it all kind of packaged up in English and Spanish. We anticipate sharing that with all 15,000 of our stakeholders. So you'll have time to rewatch today's presentation if you've got any, want to kind of go back and revisit any of the content shared today. So with that, we will keep moving through the slides and get into public comment. So here we are, finally, the moment everyone's been waiting for. We know you have lots of thoughts and ideas and feedback. And so what we really want to hear from you today are about a few key topics. So number one, the purpose and objectives of the project. So Jackie Sue walked us through that earlier. We talked about some of the goals and the objectives for the project. It would be great to hear from you about that. The alternatives under consideration. So you saw those in the video. Peter walked us all through those again. So we have those 6 alternatives as well as the no build. And so if there are key topics that you want to get into about what you saw to help us refine those, please give us your feedback. And then issues for environmental analysis. And some of these topics are the things that you all have brought up with us throughout the course of the feasibility study, throughout the community meetings we've had in 2021. So we know that there are topics that you care about, and this is your moment to really go on the record and let us know what are those issues. So Peter showed that long list of different topics. If there's one of those or 2 of those that, or however many of those that you really care about, feel free to chime in on those. Today, we will have just 2 minutes for each person to make a comment. We don't have time to take comments from the same people more than once. So we've got 2 minutes. If you're feeling nervous or stressed about speaking live, I do want to assure you that we won't be recording this part and posting this for everybody to see. So we'll post the presentation that Metro staff have given, but we're not going to put your recording out there for all of time. And we'll be listening to your comments. So as I shared, and just want to reiterate, we won't be answering questions, but we will treat your comments, your questions as comments, and that will help us inform our technical work and where we go from here. But really, the more specific your comment is today, the better the technical teams can address it as we move forward with refining the project. So I hope that's kind of a helpful overview. We'll chime in as appropriate to kind of, clarify any points if we're seeing some, concerns that you all are making, but that's kind of how it's going to go. So again, if you don't feel that you can, ready to give your comments, you're not, able to stick to under 2 minutes, no pressure. You've got lots of other ways to give your comments to us. So next slide. So with that, the way this is going to go is you can raise your hand using the raised hand function, and my colleague Stevie Espinoza is going to call on you all in the order they're received. There is a queue, so we can see who raised their hand. We'll call on you to unmute your phone and then ask you to please state your full name for the record, spell it if necessary, and then you will have 2 minutes. You'll see there will be a stopwatch, sort of a ticker here that's going to get going. So there it goes. So you get a sense of how it's going to go. I'll warn you that when you get to the very end, it lights up red. So you kind of know how it's going. And we will have to stop you at 2 minutes, and we'll do that gently, but really ask you to respect that we may have lots of folks here who want to give comments, and we want to make sure everyone has time. So at that 2-minute mark, your time will end. But if you think of something, again, lots of ways to share additional thoughts with us later. For those of you who have joined us on the phone, you're going to press *9 to raise your hand on the phone. So we'll see that in the line, press *9, and then when you're called upon, we'll call out the last 4 digits of your phone number, and then you'll press *6 to unmute yourself. At any time, if you're having challenges with this process, just want to remind you that if you need technical support, you can call or text us at 213-600-9039. So with that, Stevie, I think we're ready to start public comment. I'm going to pause just a minute here at 1:25 to show you our last 2 slides. We'll come right back to public comment. So those of you who are new commenters waiting in line, don't worry. But just want to, for anyone who does need to leave at 1:30, I want to be mindful of time. So we've put this information in the chat, but I just want to run through a few things again. So again, lots of ways to give public comment. If you need to leave at 1:30 and you need to drop out of line, no worries. You can still use our online comment form. You can mail a hard comment to Peter Carter at the address here, 1 Gateway Plaza, mail stop 99-22-6, California 90012. You can shoot us an email at sepulvedatransit@metro.net or call the project hotline 213-922-7375. We have 2 more scoping meetings coming up, identical to this one. We will be sharing the recording of today's presentation as soon as we have it available in English and Spanish. We have a lot of material for you to engage with. So we've talked today about the story map that has all of the maps that Peter shared today that were in our video. Our video is available to you, so you can watch that again a couple times and kind of take it all in. And lots of good content, FAQs. So some of you had different questions that came up today. We're not answering questions today, but you should be able to find the answers to those frequently asked questions in our online document. So then again, February 11th is our deadline for receiving all scoping comments. So lots of time to go. Today is December 7th. So please no one feel panicked or stressed out today. Lots of time to go with you. So with that, if anyone needs to leave, please thank you for being with us. We really appreciate the tremendous interest and everyone just sharing their comments so thoughtfully today. But Stevie, I will turn it back to you to keep working through those folks who are waiting to be heard. So with that, it looks like that was the last comment that we had in the queue at the time. So with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap up the meeting. Thank you again from all of us at Metro on behalf of the whole project team for being with us today. And we look forward to your continued engagement with this transformational project as we move ahead. Everyone stay safe and have a happy holiday season.